Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world where mystery still has power. In an age where nearly every detail of our lives is dissected, shared, tweeted, and analyzed, the existence of something, or someone, who cannot be fully explained captures our imagination more than any polished headline or perfectly staged photograph ever could. Tonight, I want to talk about the idea of the mystery woman, the unseen presence that quietly reshapes the trajectory of a person's life. Not through grand gestures or press releases, but through the subtle, invisible influence that is far more profound than most of us ever realize. You see, the human brain is not wired for isolation. Despite all the myths we build around genius, innovation, or leadership, no one truly stands alone. Neuroscience tells us that the brain is fundamentally social. Mirror neurons, for example, fire not only when we act, but when we observe someone else acting. A reflection that allows us to connect, empathize, and understand others almost as if their experience were our own. This means that the people closest to us, those who stand just outside the spotlight, shape our inner world at the most intimate neurological level. So when we ask, who is the mystery woman in someone's life? What we are really asking is not just about her name, her appearance, or her biography. We are asking, who is the presence that shapes the rhythms of his thoughts? Who is the one whose silence or words recalibrate the nervous system after a storm of decisions, failures, and triumphs? Who steadies the hand when the future feels impossibly heavy? That is a far deeper question, one that touches the science of attachment, the chemistry of resilience, and the poetry of being human. Let me give you an example from the realm of neuroscience. In studies of stress and resilience, researchers have observed what is called the social buffering effect. When a person faces a stressful event, whether it's public speaking, a high-stakes business decision, or even physical pain, their body responds with elevated cortisol, increased heart rate, heightened blood pressure. But if that person has a trusted partner by their side, or even hears the calm voice of someone they deeply care for, their body literally reacts differently. Cortisol drops faster, blood pressure normalizes, the nervous system recovers more efficiently. The presence of another person is not just emotionally comforting, it is biologically transformative. Think about that. It means that the mystery woman, whoever she may be, is not simply a character in someone's story. She is a regulator of his nervous system. She is the difference between chaos and clarity, between spiraling stress and sustainable endurance. This is not metaphor. This is biology. It is measurable in blood samples, observable in MRI scans, traceable in heart rate variability charts. The invisible influence is real. Now, I want you to imagine what this means for a person who lives under relentless pressure. Someone whose days are filled with decisions that affect thousands of employees, millions of customers, and in some sense, the trajectory of civilization itself. The brain under that kind of constant strain is like a machine running at maximum capacity with no rest cycle. Over time, stress accumulates microdamage. Decision-making becomes impaired, creativity narrows, empathy fatigues. But with the right partner, that stress finds release valves. The mind can breathe again. The body can reset. The sense of possibility can return. That, I believe, is the true power of the mystery woman. History has examples of this dynamic everywhere, though often hidden. Marie Curie is remembered as a pioneer, the first woman to win a Nobel Prize. But what is less often told is the role her partnership with Pierre Curie played in amplifying her resilience and courage. Their relationship was not simply romantic. It was a crucible of shared purpose, where each reinforced the other's intellectual and emotional strength. When Pierre died suddenly, Marie was nearly broken, yet the memory of that bond carried her forward into discoveries that changed the world. Behind the equations and the experiments, there was an invisible architecture of human connection. Or consider the life of Carl Jung. While he is celebrated for reshaping psychology, his personal journals reveal that many of his deepest insights emerged not in moments of solitary genius, but through dialogues with figures in his life who challenged, provoked, and inspired him. These were often women who did not appear on the stage of history, but who nonetheless served as catalysts for ideas that still shape our understanding of the mind today. And so, when we think about the mystery woman in the life of a public figure, we should not reduce her to gossip or spectacle. The real question is, how does her presence shape the inner weather of the mind that creates, builds, risks, and dreams? Neuroscience calls this co-regulation, the subtle dance of two nervous systems sensing to bring balance where there would otherwise be disarray. Without it, even the most brilliant mind can collapse under its own gravity. With it, the impossible becomes achievable. Now let's go deeper. From a neuroscientific perspective, the human brain is not static. It is constantly reshaping itself through neuroplasticity, the formation of new connections, the pruning of old ones, the rewiring of circuits based on lived experience. But here's what is often overlooked. Relationships are among the most powerful drivers of this plasticity. When someone speaks to us in a tone of safety and trust, oxytocin is released, building a sense of connection. When someone consistently validates our emotions, the prefrontal cortex strengthens its capacity for regulation. When someone inspires us to dream bigger, dopamine pathways reinforce motivation and persistence. Over time, these repeated relational experiences literally sculpt the architecture of the brain. This means the mystery woman is not just a companion. She is, quite literally, a co-architect of his neural pathways. She influences how he makes decisions, how he perseveres, how he manages fear. Her presence changes the very shape of his inner world. Think about the implications of that. Every breakthrough in engineering, every bold leap into space, every risk taken on behalf of humanity, each may carry the fingerprints, not only of the individual, whose name we know, but of the unseen partner whose steady presence reshaped his inner wiring. But let us pause here, because it would be easy to romanticize this idea, to imagine that the mystery woman is simply a muse, a source of effortless inspiration. In reality, human relationships are not always smooth, not always supportive, not always easy. Conflict, misunderstanding, disappointment, these two leave their mark on the nervous system. Yet even these moments can serve as catalysts for growth. The key lies in whether the bond is strong enough to survive rupture and repair, to cycle through conflict and return stronger, to learn how to listen even when the words are hard to hear. That process, rupture and repair, is central to human development. And in the life of someone constantly facing external battles, the ability to engage in this inner dance of rupture and repair with a trusted partner is invaluable. I remember a study in developmental psychology that followed couples over decades. The researchers found that what predicted long-term resilience was not the absence of conflict, but the presence of repair. In couples who lasted, even small gestures of reconciliation, a gentle touch on the arm, a shared laugh after an argument, a simple, "I hear you," created stability that buffered them against the storms of life. If that is true in ordinary circumstances, imagine its power when scaled up to the life of someone whose challenges play out on the global stage. And here we return again to the mystery woman. Who is she? Perhaps not someone who stands before cameras, but someone who, in moments unseen, provides that gentle gesture, that voice of grounding, that invisible scaffolding of resilience. She may not be photographed at launch pads or board meetings, but her fingerprints are present in the steady heartbeat of endurance that allows impossible visions to become tangible realities. She may not be photographed at launch pads or board meetings, but her fingerprints are present in the steady heartbeat of endurance that allows impossible visions to become tangible realities. Now let us move beyond the personal and ask, why does this matter for all of us? Why should we care about the hidden presence of a mystery woman in someone's life? Because it reveals something universal about the human condition. None of us are as independent as we like to believe. The myth of the solitary hero, the lone genius, is just that, a myth. Every achievement, from the monumental to the mundane, is scaffolded by the quiet influence of human connection. Sometimes that connection is obvious, other times it is hidden, but it is always there, shaping the flow of energy and thought in ways we cannot see until we step back. When I think about the future of humanity, colonizing other planets, building sustainable energy systems, expanding the frontier of artificial intelligence, I realize that none of it can be done alone. Technology is not enough. Rocket engines and solar panels and algorithms are not enough. To carry forward, we need the unseen fuel of human connection. Without it, machines may run, but people collapse. Dreams may be drafted, but they will not be sustained. We survive and we thrive, not because of isolation, but because of relationship. This is not merely philosophical. Consider the neuroscience of loneliness. Studies have shown that chronic loneliness increases the risk of premature death as much as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It weakens the immune system, impairs cognitive function, accelerates the onset of dementia. It is not just an emotion, it is a medical condition with measurable biological consequences. On the flip side, meaningful connection improves physical health, extends lifespan, enhances creativity, and strengthens resilience against disease. So, when we ask, who is the mystery woman in someone's life? We are asking something larger than one story. We are asking how connection sustains the brain under pressure, how intimacy fuels endurance, how unseen bonds can ignite the will to keep building when everything else feels like it might fall apart. And here lies a paradox. The more public someone's life becomes, the more essential, and yet the more invisible. These private connections must remain, because exposure distorts intimacy. When a relationship is dragged into the spotlight, it often loses the oxygen it needs to thrive. The public consumes it, interprets it, magnifies it, and in doing so, it can suffocate what made it powerful in the first place. That is why the mystery matters. The mystery is not about secrecy for its own sake, but about protection. The protection of a bond too delicate to withstand constant scrutiny. I think about how the brain processes novelty and familiarity. Neuroscience shows that novelty activates dopamine circuits, pulling us toward discovery and exploration. Familiarity, meanwhile, activates safety circuits, grounding us in predictability and comfort. A healthy life requires both. Too much novelty and we spiral into chaos. Too much familiarity and we stagnate. The role of the mystery woman, then, may be to anchor one in familiarity when the world is spinning with novelty, while also bringing her own kind of mystery that keeps curiosity alive. It is a balance, a dance between safety and wonder, between grounding and growth. Let me give you another real-world parallel. Astronauts who spend long durations on the International Space Station often speak about the overview effect. That profound shift in perspective when seeing Earth from space. But they also speak about the isolation, the sensory deprivation, the deep longing for connection back home. NASA has found that regular communication with loved ones on Earth is not a luxury but a necessity. It maintains psychological stability, it sustains performance, it keeps them human in an environment that can feel overwhelmingly alien. In that sense, the mystery woman in someone's life is like mission control for the soul. Unseen, often unheard by the outside world, but essential for survival in the vastness of the unknown. And there is another dimension to this mystery. It is not just about the influence of one individual on another. It is about what it reveals to us collectively. We live in a time where technology increasingly mediates our relationships. We text instead of talk, scroll instead of listen, send emojis instead of emotions. But deep down, our nervous systems still crave what they have always craved: the sound of a voice that brings calm, the presence of someone who makes the world feel less dangerous, the touch that reminds us we are not alone. The mystery woman reminds us that no algorithm, no device, no machine can fully replicate the transformative power of human connection. And so, I return again to the idea of mystery. Mystery is not the absence of knowledge, it is the presence of possibility. To not fully know someone is to be invited into curiosity, to wonder, to explore. The mystery woman, in that sense, is not just one person's partner. She is a symbol of the vast, uncharted territory that still exists within the human heart. She is a reminder that even in an age of data and algorithms, there remain aspects of life that cannot be quantified, cannot be measured, cannot be reduced to information. They can only be felt, experienced, lived. This matters profoundly, because as we move into a future dominated by technology, we must not lose sight of this truth. What makes us human is not only our intelligence, not only our capacity to build machines, but our capacity to love, to bond, to find meaning in one another. Without that, all the rockets in the world would feel like empty shells. Without that, even the most advanced artificial intelligence would fail to grasp what it means to be alive. So perhaps the mystery woman is not just in the life of one man. Perhaps she exists in all our lives, in one form or another. The person whose presence reshapes us, the person who grounds us, the person who keeps us human when the world pushes us to be machines. She may be a partner, a friend, a family member, a mentor. She may be known, or she may remain unseen. But she is there, shaping us in ways science is only beginning to understand. And if you ask me why this matters, why we should pause to reflect on it, I would say this: because in understanding the mystery, we understand ourselves. In recognizing the unseen influences in our lives, we recognize the truth that none of us move forward alone. And in honoring the role of the mystery woman, we honor the essence of what it means to be human. And yet, we live in a culture that constantly demands answers, that insists on pulling back every curtain, exposing every hidden detail, naming every unnamed presence. We believe that by knowing the facts, we will somehow grasp the truth. But truth does not always lie in data points. Sometimes truth resides in the silence between words, in the spaces that remain undefined. That is where mystery breathes. That is where meaning lingers. The greatest danger of our time is not ignorance. It is the illusion of complete knowledge. The idea that because we can measure something, we have understood it. Neuroscience itself warns against this. Brain scans can reveal patterns of activity, but they cannot capture the full experience of love, devotion, or the quiet endurance of a shared life. Hormone levels can be measured, but they cannot explain the poetry of sacrifice, the miracle of forgiveness, or the kind of loyalty that holds steady in the face of chaos. There are dimensions of human connection that defy reduction, and that is not a limitation of science. It is a reminder of the vastness of being human, and this brings us back to the mystery woman. She is not an answer to be uncovered, but a reminder of the depth of the human story, a reminder that behind every visible achievement is an invisible constellation of influences, sacrifices, and bonds. A reminder that even the most public lives are grounded in private connections that cannot and should not be dissected for spectacle. But here is where the story becomes even more profound. Because the mystery is not just about who she is to him, it is about who she is to all of us. She embodies the archetype of the unseen influence in every life. The teacher who believed in you before you believed in yourself. The friend who stayed up late to listen when your world was falling apart. The parent who sacrificed quietly so you could have opportunities they never did. The partner who stood by you when everyone else walked away. These are the mystery figures in all our lives. They are the ones who write their signatures not in headlines, but in the neural wiring of our brains, in the resilience of our spirits, in the shape of our stories. And this should change the way we see the future. Too often, we think about progress only in terms of technology, innovation, infrastructure, or policy. But the real measure of progress is not what we build, but who we become in the process. The real measure is whether we learn how to honor the unseen forces that make endurance possible. Whether we recognize that empathy and connection are not luxuries but necessities. If we are to colonize other planets, if we are to create sustainable civilizations beyond Earth, we will need more than engineers and scientists. We will need bonds strong enough to survive distance, separation, and the vast silence of space. We will need human connections that can endure when everything familiar has been stripped away. The mystery woman, in this sense, is not just part of one man's story. She is part of humanity's blueprint for survival. Think of the first human child born on Mars. Think of the moment that child takes its first breath in a fragile habitat surrounded by an alien landscape. What will make that life sustainable is not just airlocks and water systems. It will be the presence of love, of care, of bonds that weave meaning into survival. Without that, the colony will collapse no matter how advanced the technology. With it, humanity can thrive even in the harshest environment. That is the lesson we must carry forward. So perhaps the real question is not, who is the mystery woman, but how do we honor the mystery figures in all our lives? How do we give thanks to those who shape us invisibly? How do we carry forward their influence not with gossip or speculation, but with gratitude and reverence? How do we learn to be mystery figures for others? The steady presence, the grounding voice, the unseen hand that helps them rise when the weight of the world feels unbearable. The answer begins with attention. To pay attention is to honor, to see the person who sacrifices quietly, to notice the one who supports without applause, to recognize the fingerprints of invisible love on the fabric of our days. It begins with humility, the humility to admit that none of us achieve alone, that behind every visible success, there is an invisible scaffolding of connection. And it begins with courage, the courage to cherish what is hidden rather than expose it, to protect what is fragile rather than consume it, to celebrate what cannot be measured rather than reduce it. Ladies and gentlemen, the mystery woman may never stand on this stage. She may never be known by name. She may never be interviewed, photographed, or written into the official biographies. But her influence will echo in every heartbeat of resilience, in every risk endured, in every dream carried into reality. Her presence is proof that the most powerful forces in our lives are often the ones we cannot see. And that is why the question of who she is will always matter, not because we need an answer, but because the question itself reminds us of the truth. That mystery is not a problem to be solved, but a gift to be protected. That love, in its deepest form, does not seek recognition, only resonance. And that the unseen is often the most essential. So tonight, as you leave here, I invite you to carry this thought with you somewhere in your life. There is a mystery figure shaping you in ways you may not yet recognize. Cherish that. And somewhere in someone else's life, you have the chance to be that presence, to be the one who steadies, who strengthens, who makes resilience possible. Embrace that. Because in the end, it is not technology, not titles, not wealth that sustain us. It is connection. It is relationship. It is the mystery of one human life touching another. And that is the mystery worth living for.